I'd like to call the Building Facilities Construction Committee meeting of Wednesday, November 15th, 2023 at 10, is it 10 something? Tell me.
10:02.
10:02, thank you. Go around the table and say who we are, and I will start, so the better for the recorder. I'm Shirley Mazinski.
Linda Brown.
Fred Fontaine.
Bob Wormy.
Matt Wojcik, our administrator. Thank you, everybody. Ray won't be here. He told us at the last meeting he couldn't make it, but we do have a quorum, I believe. So the first item is this needs assessment feasibility consideration, supporting public safety and/or highway department building projects. So Matt, could you update us on anything new regarding that?
I can, and I would respectfully suggest that in future, the agenda simply say Highway Department Building Project Update. I
Fine.
think that's where
Yeah.
we're at. The initial engineer's estimate came in on the cost of the project as preliminarily specified by them, and it wasn't acceptable to the town. It was just too much money. And so while I was away last week, there was a group that met, Adam and John Furno and Weston and Sampson, reviewed the project and reduced some of the items. And so they're going to go back and re-estimate the price at this point of the building that's being designed. So the work is ongoing. I have a target in mind in terms of the amount of funding that I feel comfortable asking town meeting for, and it's quite a bit lower than what the original estimate was. Understanding that engineers' estimates at the conceptual phase of a project tend to be, they want to be heroes, not goats, right? So they want to have a really high estimate and then beat that with their insight. But we're not really, we're past that a little bit. We really need to get down to brass tacks, because we are currently in a very desirable financial condition, which may not last forever. So if we're going to go out to bond, I would like to bond with our current reserve balances where they are as of the close of fiscal '23 and not wait too long. And so we're going to push this thing along. I'm also cognizant of the fact when some of the new growth from economic development projects will be incorporated into the tax base, and will soften the
blow,
impact of the
yeah.
building. And at the same time, we do a disservice to the town if we don't build a forward-thinking project, because, you know, this highway barn is almost 100 years old, and clearly outlived its useful purpose. But, you know, we want something here that's not going to be a 30-year building. We really want something that will meet the town's needs for 50 years, 60 years. And that doesn't mean it has to be built all at once, but it's situated on the lot in such a way where if it would be added onto in the future, it would not be overly costly, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the thought process. So the notion of buying a metal building off the rack from a major contractor for $14 million is probably naive, and the idea that we'd spend $30 million on the project is crazy. So gives you the rough parameters. You know, I'd like to keep it in the low 20s and time the borrowing such that we have an additional note that's rolling off on the excluded debt side, try to make that timing match up. But we are at that point in the growth of the town, development of the town, and the age of our existing buildings. We need to do a couple of things.
Yep.
And there is a cost-effective way out of it, but it still is going to cost money. So that's where we are. I don't think the schedule is, I'm hoping, knock on wood, the schedule won't change, that we would be going to Springtown meeting with.
Okay, that was my question, yeah.
I have a question.
Yes, Linda?
How about the abutters land. Is that still in process? Because without that, we couldn't build there, correct?
So we're still in a good spot with the landowner, and the site that is being recommended would only require interacting with one landowner.
Correct. Okay, so that's ongoing. Did
Yeah.
that inflated price from Weston and Sampson include that purchase of land, or just the building
Good
itself?
question. I don't think it did.
Yeah. How large is that, the abutters piece? Is that like an acre?
There's two, and I
Two?
think they total 17 acres.
Okay.
Oh. Okay.
So it'd be a big enough site to really move the entire operation out from the front of the street to the back. And the town would still be left with that lot in front,
Okay.
which would be very useful to us
Sure.
for a number of possible solutions.
Okay, thank you.
Questions, anyone else? Okay, so will we be getting any other information as time goes on, or when the selectmen make a final recommendation, or?
I think I want to take it here first. I thought the number was so
Yeah.
out of whack that it
Okay.
was a waste of your time.
Yeah.
And it's our responsibility as administration to come up with a plausible proposal.
Okay,
But I would take it here first for a robust conversation that is only on that topic, because I think the select board schedule, the
Yeah.
agenda gets crowded with all kinds of disparate topics, and then we could focus on it here. It would also give the rollout of this thing, I really want the architectural firm to do basically a video presentation. And this, we might be able to kill two birds with one stone by having this meeting be that presentation. That we loop on cable so that people can't say they don't know what the project is about. TV is our best medium, and then we could also put it on the website. You know, at that point, people who care will find a way to get the information. But that's my intent. I think by the time we get to the select board, I think we want that to be almost finalized. The financial piece along with the physical asset.
any other?
Comment?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yes,
a
Linda.
video presentation would be important, because this has to be passed at town meeting.
Yep.
And if people don't know anything about it, my neighbors had no clue that we're getting a new highway barn, that it's needed, you know?
Well, I think when we did the walkabout
I think
with
we'll
the
match up, we'll
buildings-
probably take clips from your walkthrough, because that was on videotape, with the proposal, because I think people need to see the justification and the reasoning.
Yeah,
That sounds good. Yeah,
and not just that, like a presentation at the town meeting, but on cable. Yeah. That'd be
Oh, yeah.
great.
To do it at town meeting is too late.
yeah.
Yeah, not enough.
They've already made up their mind.
Well,
Yeah.
people's my default reaction as a voter at my own town meeting in a different town would be to vote no. If you have so little respect for my thought process that you showed me the project, which could be the biggest project in the history of the town at this point in terms of bonded indebtedness outside of the schools. Yeah, not cool. It just doesn't work that way. We got to spend a couple months educating. I hate the word educating because it makes it sound like people are dumb. Making a proposal.
Making them aware of what really is needed and
Yeah.
where we are with this building.
Yeah.
And why their taxes keep going up. I had somebody who couldn't believe how much the taxes were. I'm like, well, where do you think the money goes? It's for
Okay,
all the
Linda.
police.
Okay. All right. Any other questions for Matt? Fred?
When the video is being prepared, if you find that you need new video of the old facility, I'm sure that could be arranged.
That's good.
If the clips aren't exactly what you want to show.
Okay. Good. All right. Any other questions for Matt? No? All right. So we will change that to highway building project, which is good. All right. Item 2, administration report on projects in progress. So if, Matt, you would like to go down these and status of the oil spill. Are we still out
I
there?
feel like, you know,
I hope it's,
it
I
will
hope
show
it's
all of our
good.
ages are sitting around this table when you, if you remember the Exxon Valdez and how long it took.
Yes,
Those horrible pictures of those seabirds.
I hope that's still not in our basement.
No. So our issue down there is that we don't move enough air. The basement is it's just a lockdown facility.
Sure,
So even the slightest bit of petroleum is making our test results. You know, we're trying to test for the outcome or the results of a spill that now has occurred, whatever that was, a couple of
Yeah.
years ago.
yeah,
Not, the most recent attempt to paint something or to clean something or to clean a nozzle. So Adam put a bunch of fans in place and started moving the air around, and opening the doors and letting things go. And Pat is the environmental consultant responsible for closing this off, took another his preliminary opinion was that it was going to be a good enough sample to get us to closure. But we still not have closed.
so my question is, did he come back again, and when was
Because
this?
frankly, the first set of results wasn't going to get us to be able to close the project.
Okay, so was that recently? Because the last meeting, you weren't,
I wasn't here.
here, but the meeting before that, the sample was in, we're waiting, was that the sample? That
I think
didn't,
that was a sample that was
pass.
not going to do it.
okay,
And we came back and took another.
okay,
Because that's a couple months ago. He's been
Oh, yeah.
here more recently than that.
okay. Okay, so we're still waiting.
I have to go down there from time to time because our electric vehicle chargers are very finicky and they need to be power cycled fairly frequently. So I draw the straw to go down there and do that. And I know what Pat's picking up. You can smell oil. It's got nothing to do with the spill at all. It's just, we're operating a building with a fairly large furnace in it, and it's oil fired. So, it may be that we'll have to, there's some conversation about looking at the louver that was put in place for that furnace back during that debacle boiler project.
Yeah,
And whether or not it's facing the right direction, whether or not we're taking air in, but we're not putting any air out, and whether or not we can just do something very cost-effective and simple to deal with that. But we're not getting circulation, so anything that stinks just keeps stinking, doesn't go away.
okay. Questions, anyone? Okay, green communities, where are we? Any word on that?
So I think we're scheduled for a school vacation install to close up this year's project. The department head's been out on extended leave, so I'm not getting the
Okay.
most up-to-date information on a regular basis. I want to close it out timely because we cannot apply for another round of Green Communities competitive grants until we've closed out the existing project. We were awarded, though, the Phase 2 or Phase 3, the last phase of the high school light conversion, and it was 30, I want to say somewhere between $31,000 and $34,000. And that work, the high school, can only be done when there's no kids at school.
Okay,
And the award came after the first day of school, so I think we're looking at the holiday season or spring break. I don't think Matt was at your last meeting either,
no.
so.
All I know is the grant was still out in August.
He was awarded, I believe, in September. We got the,
Okay,
because the select board voted to accept the funds
okay.
in one of their September meetings, I believe.
So info not out, not available at this time regarding anything further than the electrical for the school. Okay, municipal backup generator.
So I I corresponded with Fall River Electric the end of October and received assurances that the plan is still to come here after Thanksgiving and begin the prep work, and that the generator ship date was still January 2024. I tweaked them again this morning, because it's been 3 weeks since I last heard from them. You know, after Thanksgiving is pretty open-ended.
Yeah,
That could be next Thanksgiving, right?
don't say that.
So I just wanted to get them moving, because to my mind, you know, once the ground gets difficult to work with, now we're pushing into spring. Further in this agenda, we have another topic where we're looking at spring work. I just don't want all these crews running around town hall at the same time and getting in each other's way, especially if we're gonna have a crane with roofing materials, and it's just, because we also have to have a crane for the generator, so the notion that everybody's gonna be running around,
With cranes.
kind of silly. So, there has been no backsliding though either, so we're still just waiting for that generator to ship.
Questions, anybody? Okay. The roof replacement,
So town meeting voted the funds
yeah,
and also voted to combine the project. So
Yeah.
now we have what we need to go out to bid. So Adam Furno, and our lead is John Como at Weston and Sampson. That's our lead contact at our house, quote-unquote, house doctor. And they are going to put together the bid package for us. They're looking for summer, late spring, early summer work. The correspondence I received this morning was they would look for a bid package in February, and I have pushed back on that. February is a really busy time. We're closing up the budget, we're working on the spring town meeting warrant. It's not a good time to be running a bid assessment, you know, a bidding process. There's too much on the plate, so I would like them to push that up and get the bid package put out sometime in mid-December. And I don't care if we advertise for a little bit longer, that's fine.
okay.
But I'd like to open bids in January, get on someone's schedule and have them committed to being here. I don't want to wait too late in the spring when somebody's already, commercial roofers are different, all right? The projects are a little bit bigger. I don't want to get on the end of their schedule for the end of summer. That's not a good solution either. So that's where we are with that. So thank you to the voters at town meeting for voting that. It makes a lot of sense to do it the way we're going. And as I've said before, this is a dangerous area to make predictions, so I won't make a prediction, because roofing materials, the costs have been kind of all over the place. But we followed the process the way we did in order to minimize the risk of having to look for any more money from town meeting. So the engineer's estimate is admittedly high on the roof project, but we asked town meeting for the sufficient funds to pay for the project at the engineer's estimate. So our hope, of course, is that a competitive bidding process will get a lower price. One of the most important aspects of awarding this contract will be to review the background and references of the roofing contractors. There are a couple of players in this industry that notoriously come in as low bids, and they do absolutely terrible work. And if you need reminding, they have worked in Douglas before.
Okay,
So there's an agency, DCAM, it's the Division of Capital Asset Management at the Department of Administration at the state level, that maintains records of contractor performance on major building projects. And you can be assured we will review the DCAM file in great detail before moving forward on that contract. We need somebody really,
yeah,
we don't want to have to get a roof repair, you know, just a couple of years after a brand-new install,
No.
especially when we're going with the more durable material.
Questions, anybody? I'll just be glad when this roof situation is done and we don't end up with more leaks,
Yep.
because it's not going to get any better.
They don't usually get better
No.
on their own.
No. And Adam's up
Maybe
there
the day will
patching.
come when we'll have self-healing roofs.
No.
Wouldn't that be awesome?
That's why I put on a metal roof. All right. If there's no further questions, we'll move on to the municipal fire alarm, which
Fire alarm
is
is
still hanging.
Tied to the roof.
Tied to the roof, right. So where are we with the fire station upgrade?
So this past week, again, the fire chief and assistant chief met with Weston and Sampson, reviewed all of the architectural options for working within the existing building, for the storage of different things and the movement of air, and chose the option they want. So now they're coordinating back to McRitchie, which is doing the electrical project, to make sure the electricity supply and main service connection is sufficient to support the ventilation plan on the interior of the building. So that, we're moving forward with that. McRitchie now has all of the final architectural drawings for the inside of the building, and they're going to design around that. I'm cautiously optimistic that they should move that work along fairly quickly, since they're very familiar with what we're dealing with there.
Questions? No? Okay, in the ARPA funding and qualification discussion, I'm basically, well, I'm not putting words in your mouth. Where's the ARPA funding? It's been used, right?
No, a lot of these projects are actually ARPA projects, right? A couple of them are. The fire station in particular is where ARPA funds are being utilized.
Oh,
The select board chose to reserve or encumber the largest portion of the ARPA funds for a water system upgrade here on Depot Street, which I believe part of the funding that was approved by town meeting last week was for the design portion, which is not covered, not an ARPA eligible expense. So the water department, wastewater department will be funding that engineering work. And then we will look at what that will cost and how much of the project we can do with our remaining ARPA funds, which I think is over $1 million. I didn't think the question was answered adequately at town meeting. There is no specific drainage aspect to this project. Over here at the old grist mill on Depot Street,
right,
there is it's really a bridge
right.
with a culvert under it that allows all that water to pass, and it partially crumbled under some pressure from stormwater runoff. And there is an existing sewer pipe that goes through that. So we're not going to do a water project and not fix the bridge, the culvert. So that we will probably be using both ARPA and Chapter 90 funds to make sure that we address that. The preliminary review, because we put this out to bid originally some time ago and got some engineering quotes back that were just weren't timely. But it's a dry stack, and we're going to put it back as a dry stack, all those big heavy stones. Not really going to do anything. The only thing that we're going to improve on that culvert is the stormwater management, so we're going to catch it before it
Okay.
gets into any creases and pushes anything apart. Our biggest obstacle on that entire water course is our dear friends, the busy beavers, that have been progressively damming right here in downtown, quote-unquote, downtown Douglas, including right next to the Jenks store, where Cottage Street flooded in the last major rainstorm because the beaver have actually dammed the
I didn't know
dam.
that.
They've dammed the damn dam.
Oh
The
my
damn
God.
beavers. But it's really quite a thing. There's a lot of water. I don't think people realize how much water there is around the municipal center until you come here after a storm or during the spring melt, and you hear the water rushing down. But there's a lot of water back here, and the
Yeah.
beaver have been-
Beavers are up the street too? Between
Yeah, if you drive up and down Martin Road and Depot Street, and take a good look at that pond, especially if you've been a long-term resident of the town, you'll see it's really high. And it's not because of the spring rain or summer rain. It's high because it's
They
not going anywhere.
damned the,
They damned everything.
that happens up at Wallace Pond, too. But that's more out in the woods.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's a pretty walk up
yes,
there.
it is.
The only other thing I would add to your agenda, only as a point of discussion, Madam Chair, if you want those,
Yes.
about 5 minutes.
Sure.
This year's wet season drew attention to stormwater management as an ongoing issue in the community, and I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about where Massachusetts doctrine is on the topic, and that doctrine has changed quite a bit, really, in the last 2 decades. Because Massachusetts, for a long time, was a common enemy state. And then stormwater was viewed as a common enemy that we all struggled with, and so there was literal or no liability for water running from one person's property onto another. It just wasn't something that, and Massachusetts was a long-term holdout with that particular legal theory. Most communities, most state jurisdictions didn't do that anymore.
Yeah.
The Massachusetts courts have modified this fundamental doctrine to basically, what you cannot do is capture stormwater on your property and into a channel or a pipe and direct it more or less directly onto someone else's property. You cannot do that. So I think some folks on some of our land use regulatory boards need to come up to speed with that doctrine, because you cannot approve stormwater management systems on an existing piece of property without paying attention to where all that water is going to go after you've captured it all. On the flip side of that, existing municipal systems can be repaired without generating liability to the municipality. And this is where we get into some sticking points with folks. Just because the pipe didn't work, because it was blocked or broken, doesn't mean that the town can't come and fix it and then have water now come onto your property from the right-of-way. Because that was already there. And making sure that our pre-existing system works is essential, because if it doesn't work, if you're on the top of a grade and you have all your top culverts are blocked, all the water is continuing to progress and damage people downhill. And that is where the municipalities have significant leeway to repair those block culverts at the top of the grade so that the water is more evenly distributed all along the way. It's been an issue on South Street, it's an issue on Orange Street, it's an issue in other places. And lastly, I will say this in as many public forums as I can get a microphone. If the town's not involved at all, then the town's reliance upon our engineers for a site plan review, approval, or some such thing, that is the end of the town's involvement. If water goes from one person's private property onto another person's private property, that's not really going to be an area where the municipality is directly liable. It is still a nuisance being created by that property owner for the other property owner. It's a civil matter as between them. And we always try to fix problems. We want everybody in town to be happy. But the fact of the matter is, we can't wade, I'm using the pun on purpose. We're not going to wade into these private land disputes over nuisance issues, because our zoning code does not identify stormwater as an environmental condition that requires the zoning officials' involvement. If it was smoke, or noise, or vermin, we would have a nexus, a regulatory nexus, but we don't with stormwater. Provided, of course, it doesn't impact a wetlands resource area, in which case Conservation Commission would be involved.
Questions?
So, but this is different than like an erosion control bylaw. This is what you're talking about.
Yeah, I'm just updating everybody on what the doctrines are.
Okay.
I don't think we can go much longer without a stormwater management bylaw. I'm not volunteering to be the one who leads a charge at town meeting on that issue, because it's still a rural community with people with large pieces of land. But I would like there to be a clear, transparent set of rules that people can refer to before they buy a piece of property, before they make improvements to their property, so they understand what their rights are, and where the town's liability ends and where theirs begins. You have a question that you've been working on for about 5 minutes now.
So, yeah, my question is, why this board?
Because at the end of the day, we may be building a lot of structures.
But that's for the town. And zoning bylaws, which brings up another issue
Master plan.
that didn't get voted on at town meeting and completely, not even officially, got bypassed, which was the solar bylaw additions recommended by the state.
So I was on the phone.
I heard you briefly.
I stayed to the end. And it all happened so fast, I didn't even have a chance to raise my hand and say, wait a minute, this is all
Yeah.
done.
I
So the
agree.
entire thing was vetted. From time to time, I do get slightly frustrated with the planning board. It's like, you're in the room. You finished this work. Stand up and tell the residents that you finished. So contrary to what anybody might think, the town passed the solar bylaw, and the Attorney General said it's in force. They made suggestions for improvements
Right.
that we brought back to town meeting because we wanted to be in a good place with the Attorney General's office. But that doesn't mean that the existing bylaw was disapproved by the Attorney General. It was not. So as it was passed originally by town meeting, it remains in force. The Attorney General's edits made it a more friendly bylaw to work with, both for developers and abutters. So there were improvements, and I'm just flabbergasted that it got passed.
I remember what happened was the moderator had said, somebody from planning board come up and speak on this. None of them, nobody got up.
Yeah, I will never
So that's
understand
why
that.
it
If you
was
spend
passed on.
hours in meetings dealing with an issue, then just get up and raise your hand and say, yep, we voted that, and it was whatever, 6-1 or 7-0.
I mean, not all the members were there.
There were
but-
two.
A sufficient number were there.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but none of them got up, that's why
And
it
the
was passed
select board
over.
was there too. So I'm a little bit disappointed. That should not have happened. That should have been addressed.
So where does this go?
Well, the changes weren't voted
The
on.
changes weren't voted, so
That's it.
we can just put it on again for the next meeting and just
Because
tell
there,
everybody, the work got done, so why wouldn't you just do it? It makes the bylaw better, it makes the enforceability of it better. The primary goal of that bylaw was to protect the residents of the town from developers. This is a glaring weakness in the solar industry. It is a real problem that they're doing all this flip-o-matic stuff. So I come in, I develop it, then I sell it. So the chain of responsibility for all the construction decisions is basically broken. The only people who care are passive investors who are picking this thing up for the revenue that it generates. That's being written up everywhere. know if they-
I have read
You know,
it.
the environmental community as well as the energy community, they're all really up in arms about this pattern of behavior. In particular, there are a couple of players in this town who, I'll name names because I don't care. The track record is there, it can be proven, it's not false. You know, Blue Wave in particular has a terrible reputation in the industry for doing this. They barely meet specs, then they take off and they sell the thing and they're done with it. And that just leaves communities holding the bag. The bylaw protects the community and makes sure that the design standards that are implemented are long-term and thoughtful. The other problem here with, and I still think it's within your bailiwick, because if the town ever considers building its own solar fields or power storage facilities, we would have these same issues. The engineering community has been woefully behind in figuring out that they're wrong. It's tough to tell people who are really smart that they're wrong, because they want to fight with you, and they're going to tell you, well, can't do the calculus I can do. I don't care with the great big sigma. I just remember that from calculus class, that great big sigma sign. That's all I care to remember from calculus. It doesn't matter. I don't care. I don't care how much math, how many trigonometric tables you have in the back of your book, and you can look things up. If you're standing at the bottom of the hill and you're getting crushed by water, you clearly didn't do the calculations correctly. Sorry, but there's something you don't understand either about forest soils or bedrock depth or the absorptive rate of vegetated or unvegetated open space and the runoff rates off the panels. But they're messing it up and they're hurting themselves. And so it's just absurd that we didn't get this through.
So that comes back
We all
to,
prepared for like months for town meeting too. It's not like,
right,
surprise, town meeting's tonight. No,
well, I have a suggestion
okay.
on town meeting situation like that. And this has happened a couple times where I personally go into a town meeting and nobody knows who's bringing up which item. That didn't happen on my watch. Before you left the selectmen's meeting, you knew who was going to take which item on the agenda for town meeting, whether it be planning board member or each and every selectman. I'm sorry, and if some selectman wasn't there, and when I was chairman, then I ended up covering for that person too.
Yeah,
So-
it used to be all the selectmen would basically.
Well, I agree, and so when I started here, it was heavily scripted. Let's face it.
I mean-
It was heavily scripted. The moderator has gotten away from that in order to make
Yeah.
the meetings more efficient, especially during COVID. The casualty, the unanticipated casualty of going to that more informal system is that we don't have those talking points and other things, and the exact wording of the motion isn't necessarily worked out. We got to get back to that, because we can't have this again.
So then so we're looking at this and you're making a recommendation on stormwater management discussion. I mean, boards go through all this stuff and it gets kind of left by the wayside, so why
I think
bother?
it used to be the town engineer, actually.
He did.
who Spoke for the boards.
Yeah,
Like
in regard to issues like that. Yeah.
Planning, yeah.
But still, whatever board you're on, and you're presenting or should be presenting the article, it's your responsibility. I'm sorry.
Oh,
If
yeah.
you're an elected
Oh,
board
yeah.
member,
Yes. But,
look, and we're not so, pardon me for, we're not so harsh about town meeting where if somebody gets up and fumbles over a couple of phrases, nobody's going to sit there and judge you if you had to speak impromptu about a topic. It's just not, I don't know what the problem is. If you can stand for election, you should be able to get a microphone at town meeting and say, yeah, we reviewed this and we approved it.
I'll be looking forward to seeing it back on the town warrant. Sorry.
But I did have to get that up there. The bylaw is in place,
Okay.
you know.
That's good to know. So,
As far as stormwater management, that's something that an upcoming master plan committee could look at.
it has to be dealt with.
Yes.
Yeah.
Did this committee already take a volunteer for that? Were you invited?
Yes, it's Linda.
Linda.
Yeah.
Because that's how they went through it. It was like a final report, and I was reading it, and there were a lot of things that were not
Finished.
finished,
Yeah.
and decided to pass over and, return to planning board and stuff like that.
Okay.
And it
Have you
was never
had any word as to when the meeting is starting?
No.
Or they haven't got all their
I don't
members,
think they've
probably?
appointed
Yeah.
anyone.
Okay.
Well, we've made a lot of progress. I think school committee is still outstanding. Why am I sticking, I'm stuck on one, there's another committee that hasn't named their person. I think Open Space did theirs the other day at their meeting. But we're waiting for that. School committee obviously is an important player in this discussion. Whether the department head has returned from leave or not doesn't matter. The process has to get started. My last indication was that we were going to get started in January with meetings.
Okay. All right, so you're suggesting that we put stormwater management on our agenda for discussion.
I flagged it for your interest. I think the other thing I would suggest might be put on your agenda is, as part of the master plan discussion, vacant buildings. We're just going to have to make a decision as a community about some of these buildings.
Okay.
I know in the capital process this year, I'll be much more vocal than I've been in the past about demolition of one very small building I don't think anybody really cares about. It just never scores very high, but at this point, it's now a safety issue, having that stupid thing sit there with an X on it. We gotta get rid of that.
That's the little house
The little
next to
house.
the,
I expect the conversation will be somewhat more passionate about what some people refer to as the Veterans Hall. To me, that is truly the old grammar school there on Main Street. And
first and second grade.
people just have to really do some soul searching and think about what they can ask their fellow taxpayers to sustain. The building is continuously deteriorating, so
And what's going to be done with the old fire station if it's not upgraded? Or at least,
I think there's some hope. I mean, this is the Buildings Committee. That's not all built at the same time. There was a portion of that that is actually quite serviceable. And
no, I know they use it for storage, but
I think we
it
would-
just looks awful.
Yeah. I think there are several different topics of discussion there. I think the scariest thing is the tower. I know that there's one voice that in the past was very active in town affairs, has been somewhat less active in town affairs the last 5 years, but who was really wedded to trying to save that tower. But the building's not actively used, so we would have to secure it. But as it stands now, it is barely standing. So that's one issue. Then the station itself, the wooden portion of the structure, which does seem to have some pretty good integrity still. And then there's a cinder block portion, which is, I don't want to say new, but it's
Recent.
it's
like-
recent, and we put valuable things in there.
Yeah.
Because we trust it. And the heating system still works, and we still run it. We keep it at 38 or whatever, but
So we do have a historic commission, nothing to do with Historical Society. That's a private entity, which there's been a lot of work done on. But I understand, it takes money, lots.
yeah.
I agree with you that the town needs to make a decision. It's never going to get less expensive to either demolition or rebuild. It's always going to be more in the future.
And the only other thing I'd flag for this committee in particular is we often give it short shrift because we perceive it to be an actively used building. But one of your most important historical assets is your old town hall. And it is a significant investment to keep that asset in place. Notwithstanding the Wallace devise, that it's only for a limited portion of that building. The post office is a terrible, terrible, terrible tenant. I cannot stand them. They don't pay us enough money to barely run the place, and that's absurd. First of all, we're not getting paid, the town's not getting paid enough money for that rent. But as a centerpiece of the town's history and its visual, as you come into the downtown area, that's a really, really important thing. And we just have to remember, we've been painting it, we've been doing some upgrades, we've been doing some lighting upgrades, the senior center is in a good spot, but there's just an ongoing maintenance requirement to make sure the building is kept up and inspected, and the windows are getting to the point where they're, not all that anymore. And so when we look through buildings that we don't actively use the entire building, that should be at the top of the list in my viewpoint, and not forgotten, because there's a part of me I'd like to throw the post office out on their rear ends, but it's
Well, they
easier
must
said
be
than
under
done.
a contract,
They are.
right?
They
So
are.
many years.
Again, a poorly negotiated lease, which gave them the sole option to renew. But the time is approaching. It's not forever. It's 2027.
Interesting.
Questions?
The Grand Army of the Republic Hall. I think that's the best title I've had.
All right, anything else? Any other questions, comments? If not, I'm looking for a motion to approve the minutes of October 25th, 2023. And if you haven't read them, just take a brief moment to. It was a short session, and
I make a motion to approve the October 25th, 2023.
hold it. I'm sorry. Okay, sorry, Linda. I was
I make a
looking.
motion to approve the October 25th, 2023 meeting minutes as presented.
Second.
Linda and Fred. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So voted. Thank you. We do have upcoming meetings, December 20th, 2023, and January 17th, 2024. Can you believe it? Wow. Anybody have problems at this point with those meetings? You're good for a December 20th meeting? Nobody going away, or I can't ask Ray at this point, but he's usually pretty good at trying to make it, or on Zoom. Just today he couldn't. Anybody?
Good.
Okay, and I appreciate you when I send you a reminder that you do let me know. That helps. All right. If there's no other issues, topics, not reasonably anticipated in the 48 hours, then I look for a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn at 10:51.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Thank you again, everybody, and good questions, and thanks, Matt, for the information.